So I think what I really wanted to get at, what really intrigues me is is how you came to develop such an incredible sense for communicating or identifying or recognizing the spirits in a place or the spirit of a place.
Right. I was just writing to someone recently, and I don't know why, but I felt compelled to tell him a little bit about my past because he told me a little bit about his. I come from a very large family. There's 13 of us. I am the oldest of 13.
Mm.
My father was a farmer, a farmhand. We moved from farm to farm. Uh, it seemed like we always had to move in the wintertime. I remember going to as many as 7 or 8 different schools in one year.
Mm.
So wherever we went, I never knew how long it was going to last, but we did socialize as a family because we're always moving. So I didn't have a socialization process growing up. But I remember I had to help my father every day of my life since I was 5 years old. He took me everywhere that he went, which is mostly fields, and I had to find ways to entertain myself. So nature became my solace. I spent a lot of time alone, and I knew every sound in nature. I knew every animal in nature. I noticed the slightest differences in anything that happened from the wind to animals. When I was growing up, I experienced things that were very, very magical. And until I actually went to school for the first time, I thought that everyone in the world experienced these magical things. They were very common and normal for me. But it wasn't until I got into school that I realized that the magical things that I was experiencing are not normal. And I learned very quickly that there were the kinds of things that you don't talk about. So I kept these things to myself. But as a result, um, I learned to sit still for very, very long periods of time. And I noticed that the longer I became still, like most things in nature, um, I noticed that nature began to reveal itself to me. Over the years, I've come to learn that the only way nature reveals itself to you is if you have the ability to sit quietly and silently for long periods of time. I've come to realize and I sense that it's creation's way of determining whether or not you have what it takes to be shown some of the things that are what I call very sacred, that you have to earn them. It's not something that anyone can just walk into. And I think it has to be, it's a right and a privilege that has to be earned. And so it's almost second nature to me. I'm almost positive. In fact, that's one of the things I share with the gentleman. I think the only reason I survived Vietnam was because some of the things that I learned when I was young about being quiet, being silent, and blending in, becoming invisible. So I notice everything that happens. Um, I hear the things that are not being spoken, or the things that can't be heard by anyone else. I can hear them. New York was a very exciting place for me to visit, but to me, it was an example of what madness might be like. And I say that with a smile because you don't have to go to New York to find that. It's everywhere.
Mm. You can
I
just,
probably got completely off track, I'm sure.
no, no, no. I was thinking you can just drive up the road to Phoenix. And that's pretty crazy.
Oh yeah, so I I avoid at all costs driving to the airport to pick people up because it's just very challenging for me.
Yeah.
And the airport is on the edge of Phoenix, but that's as close as I want to get to inner city.
So maybe we could talk a little bit about, I mean, I was so impressed when I visited you in the desert with how you had, I'm not sure what to call it, but maybe a mental map of what seemed like a huge amount of territory. Um, and I just, how does that develop? How do you, because there were no signs or obvious roads in many of the places we went. I mean, how did you develop that talent?
Would you agree that when you're working with folks, let's suppose that you're working on some kind of surgical procedure, even though there's all these things and directions and things that they teach you, would you agree that over time you develop a sense of knowing how and when to move and almost an intuitive ability of what needs to come next, and then you kind of just move in that direction? Would you agree with that?
I think so. I mean, it it's probably not conventional science, but I
Oh, it
think,
isn't. No, I've always found it intriguing that
yeah,
science is trying to meet up with something. Let me give you an example. For us, one of the things I teach is what we call the four directions. And the direction that rules the planet today is called the direction of the north, which is the mind. It's masculine in nature and it rules the head and the throat. So everything that is expressed in northness has to come from the head. It's where my reality comes from. And then whatever my reality is, with my voice, I voice my reality. Northness is very logical and practical and rational and has to plan everything and seeks to know everything, and in some cases, know everything. It's the part of me that needs and seeks rationality. It seeks to know. And the North, which is the opposite, is called the place of trust and innocence, and it's the realm of the heart. North is called the place of word. The South is called the place of no words. South cannot be described in words. So I find it interesting that people that come here want me to share an existence with them that can't even be described in words. They say that anything that happens in the South can only be experienced. So being asked to express something in a language that doesn't even exist in the South or in the experience of South becomes a challenging pursuit. Um, it's like trying to describe love, right? If you ask 50 different people what love means, you're going to get 50 different answers because it's personal and unique and different and sacred for each person. So that's when we walk in the desert, we know that anything that happens is, I always tell people, whatever happens is happening for you. So when people come out, I take them for walks in the desert and I watch what happens around them because what determines what happens around me is the kind of energy that I walk with in the world. I remember the first time you came out. We went to the desert and the wind spirits went crazy. windstorms, dust everywhere. They became very excited and very active while you were here. Many, many years ago, the wind became unknown to me, and we've been working together ever since. It lets me know about everybody that comes. It tells me what I need to know about them. And it's kind of like my guide when I work with others, is what happens with the wind. Because they say nothing can hide from the wind, and that's a fact. So it gives me insight. Um, Here's another thing that's interesting that I noticed, that when we were working together, things can happen with two people together that can't happen by myself or by yourself.
Mm-hmm.
So the two of us together created an energy that was more accessible to both of us than it was for me by myself or for you by yourself. So I've always found that intriguing, which is why I like working, because we could do some really cool things with others that we couldn't necessarily do on our own. It's kind of like when two people get together, the energy automatically shifts and becomes one energy of the both, as opposed to just two individual energies. It's kind of like when two animals come together or anything comes together. Um, Things will happen by ourselves that wouldn't happen with anyone else there. It's very intricate, very unique every time. I don't know if that answered your question. Probably not.
Yeah, no, we're getting there's never a direct answer.
Well, now you're getting it.
Well, and one thing that made me think of, there's a kind of debate among um I don't know, scholars, indigenous scholars, about whether how easy it is for someone to move from the place of their origin, the place of their birth, to another place and to become resonant with that new place. And some say it's really difficult, and others say no. Um, Wherever we are, we're in dialogue with whatever is there, and we just need to listen. And I suspect you would lean more toward the latter perspective, because I know you didn't grow up in Arizona City, and yet you are so embedded now in so many conversations with so many mountains and places and rocks around you. And I suspect that happened slowly over time. Am I getting it?
It's the excitement that a child feels when they see something for the first time. Sort of felt like for me when I came here.
Hmm.
It's like when I spent time with my grandfather. My grandfather was not a person that spoke very much. In fact, he spoke very little. And if you asked him a question that he thought was irrelevant, he would give you one of these numbers. And one day I asked him why he does that. And he says, if you're going to ask a question, he says, make sure that you ask a question that is worthy to be asked. He didn't like to waste words. I didn't realize my grandfather was known for his wisdom, but what he was most known for, and I didn't realize how powerful that was his presence. And one time I remember I was living with him for a year, and we were at a family gathering where all the relatives were there, and uncles and aunts, and nephews and nieces and cousins and all the relatives. Everybody was there, and we were all laughing, joking, eating, exchanging loud noises. Da, 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 da. And my grandfather and my grandmother were just on the sidelines, kind of just watching. And somewhere in the middle, about 2 hours into it or something like that, my grandfather went just like that. And it took me a second to realize what had just happened because when he cleared his throat, there was a complete silence around this park everyone was at. There was just silence, and I'm looking around like, what the heck? And that's when I realized that my grandfather's presence, how powerful it was. Even though everyone was laughing, joking, eating, making noises, playing games, doing this, doing that. They were keenly aware of my grandfather's presence, and when he cleared his throat, that meant grandfather is about to speak, and it just became quiet. I'll never forget that. And that's in that moment is when I realized, yeah, and I saw my grandfather differently after that. I took him with much more reverence and much more respect because, and it wasn't a respect or reverence that he demanded. It was just his way. It was just his presence. Um, and it's kind of like that when I first came to the desert. It was different than anywhere I'd ever been. And when I walked into those mountains, you can feel presence, unspeakable presence. Um, and I took notice and I started walking differently than I would walk anywhere else. I knew that no matter what happened in that desert, that it was going to be a teaching of some kind and a lesson that I did not want to miss. So I noticed and listened to everything around us. And over time, I have learned and seen things, and now I know where to go to specific places to ascertain specific issues or things that I want to know about or learn about someone. And the wind is different in all those places. The wind is different in every place has its own wind, I guess you could say, its own energy. Um, it's just like, kind of like spending time with a person over a period of years. You'll learn their mannerisms. You'll learn their little idiosyncrasies. You'll learn what activates, what triggers them, what they react to. And it's the same thing with nature. Nature has a personality, I guess you could say, just like people do. And they have moods. There are moods in nature. Um, so yeah, it becomes an interesting journey into discovery every time we go out. As to what kind of mood the world is in, what kind of mood nature is in. Sometimes the old Naguals will sit together and we'll tune into what we call the mood of the world. Um, we'll tune into the mood of the world and see what's going on in the world because we don't watch news and all that kind of stuff. So we just turn into the mood of the world. As soon as I encounter somebody, I can tune into their mood and pretty much tells you quite a bit about a person.
Mm.
Again, I don't know if I.
Yeah, no, it's great. Could you I wondered if you could pick one of the places that we visited with you and tell about the process of how you got to know that place and the conversations that you had with the spirits in that place over time that led to how it was that you knew to go to that place for what we needed to do.
There's a big rock, very huge rock, a monolith that I go and spend time in. It has a cave underneath it, and I can feel an energy from this rock that is unlike any other rock. I knew that this rock was a very special place is because it's got a tree growing out of it. And according to science, trees aren't supposed to grow out of rocks, but there's a rock tree growing out of this rock. So I knew it was special. And I go up there and I would lay on it. It's very special birds have come to me when I'm on this rock. But one time I was laying on this rock, and I call it my healing rock. I go there for healing. Even when I was in the hospital, I would mentally go to this rock for healing. Even though my body was in the hospital, my mind and spirit were on this rock, and I was gathering energy. But I fell asleep, and then about, I don't know, several hours into it, I felt something tickling my cheek. I brushed it off, and I started going back into my sleep again. And again, I felt this tickling, and I brushed it off. And when it happened the third time, I knew that something was going on. And so I opened my eyes, and there was nothing around me. Um, but I noticed that all the plants and the weeds and everything around there started shaking. They started, and then I said something like, "I see you." And then they started shaking again. And then all of a sudden, in my mind, I started getting visions. I started talking with the wind. And I knew that it was the wind because it was acknowledging me as I was thinking. And that was my first time ever that I made connection with the wind. And it shared a lot of interesting things with me about that area and about wind energy. And it let me know that this was a good place to bring people for certain things to happen. And it would help me to do that. Events, certain events happen in certain places that kind of mark themselves as a place that is not like any other place. And again, it has to do with the people that you're with. Certain things will happen with certain people that um, just because something happens at this place doesn't mean that that's always going to happen there. Sometimes it'll happen with someone else at a different place. So it's kind of like the person that determines it, right? It's kind of like not just me, it's you that's doing it. You're the activator. You're the catalyst of whatever needs to happen there. I had taken many places to this one place I took you. I'd taken many people there, but it wasn't until I took you there that a lot of other interesting things started happening. So that told me that it wasn't just the place itself, it was you, the activator, the catalyst that was kind of bringing it together.
Mm.
And that way, nature makes sure that you can't always predict it. Some things can be predicted, but not all things.
I suspect that many of us have grown up with this notion of separation from nature, that we go into nature and not that we are nature, and that we're in we're capable of being in a continued dialogue with nature, with the other parts of nature around us if we're willing to listen.
I find it interesting that people, and it's real too interesting too, Lewis, even if you tell people they sort of cognitively intellectualize what that might be like, but I can see in their energy and in their spirit that really they really don't get it. Um, that we are not separate. Um, so sometimes I'll take people and sit them in a certain place just to see if they have the patience to be with themselves long enough to sort of where something can happen. There's a certain tree that I take people to and I sit them there, and then the bees will come. When I was sitting under this tree, about 45 minutes later, all the buzzing of the bees became very clear and very audible dialogue between people, two spirits, or maybe an elder and a child, or that dialogue was very clear and very audible. And I just sat and listened to this dialogue for about another 35 or 40 minutes, or sometimes even longer. And then all of a sudden, just as quickly as it came, that dialogue stops and it becomes the buzzing of bees again. So one of the things I like to do is I like to test people's ability to be patient, and let's see what happens. Um, that's a very hard thing for people to do, to sit and see what happens.
Yeah, it goes against our fast-paced culture.
Absolutely does.
Mhm.
One of the things that I'm struck by, still thinking about, is when you were talking about when you were in the hospital and you were able to mentally travel to the rock. And I was thinking how powerful and important that would be for people to learn that they can do that.
The hospital was fixing the outside of me, but the only way I could fix the inside of me was go to the rock. Um, the hospital was more of a distraction, and it reminded me of the things that my body was experiencing, and sometimes it was really hard. So I consciously would leave that body and go to the mountain and lay on this rock where I could receive the healing that it was giving me. Um, yeah. So whenever I go to a sacred place like that, Sheldon, one of the things we do is we call it make a memory. I put my arms out and I feel with every part of me that I can. I feel the rock. I feel the energy around me. I feel the sun. I feel the wind. I immerse myself in that energy, in that place, as much as possible, with everything that I can, with every part of me, so that I can memorize it and feel it in my body. I consciously tell my body, feel this, memorize it, be it. And then I close my eyes and I see if I can do that with my eyes closed till I can feel it the same way that with my eyes closed that I did with my eyes open. So that way, wherever, no matter where I'm at, I can go back to that place just by calling in the energy of that feeling when I was there. It's kind of like me when I still feel like going and visiting Central Park once in a while. When I was there, I still have some very, very fond memories of Central Park and some of the things I did while I was there. The Cinderella Rock, where they have all these Disney characters. I don't know, are they still there?
Yeah.
There you go. Little things that nobody would think about, but I thought about them.
Central Park is a few blocks away from me. It's like a 5-minute walk. and spend a lot of time there. I'll look for you there.
Wow, I'd love that. You might feel me there.
I think I will.
Yeah.
Mm.
I don't know what you're doing, Sheldon, but thank you.
How about, can you talk a little bit about, you took us to a place where we did the sacred mountain ceremony, and it was tremendously powerful place. And I just wondered if you could talk a little bit more about how you connected with that place and and what its preferences are for what it likes to do with people.
That is a place that I take people to on a regular basis. I have been given permission to take people there because of the configuration of the mountains are in a certain way that they can concentrate the energy of that place uh, directly into or onto a person or persons. It's a place where I can call in the healing birds. It's a place where people can leave their sound. What a lot of people don't know is when you leave your sound in a certain place, your echo, which is why I picked that particular place, if you can make an echo happen, echo opens up power places and releases certain abilities of that place or that mountain that can only be released through the sound of echo. And the sound of echo can only be done by you because you carry a specific signature, you, if you will, with your sound. And when you leave a loud enough sound where it echoes, it opens that place up into in such a way that it will give you energy that you don't even realize you're receiving, and that can only come from your sound and your echo. So that's one of the reasons I take people there. People have had numerous shifts in consciousness, shifts in body, experiences that they had. One lady that went there had stage 3 cancer. And when she came and left her sound, all the healer birds came. They actually landed next to her and they were there for several minutes. And they did some amazing work with her. I did some drumming and, well, needless to say, uh, things were never the same for this woman. By the time she went back home, she was completely free of any kind of illness that she came there with. But the biggest thing about it was that she was very open to that possibility. Uh,
Mm.
there are certain areas there where the mountain energy is very receptive. And if I can convince people there that they are the only ones that are stopping possibility from happening with their own resistance of whatever they might think. The only work that there is involved is really convincing to someone that how absolutely amazing they are and how much ability they have if they can just get out of their own way. We're pretty incredible beings if we can just allow ourselves to tap into that.
Yeah, yeah. And I wonder, um, why do you suppose the mountains are so willing to help us?
because the mountains are the same thing that we face every single day of our lives. Except they're mental mountains.
Mm.
They are the obstacles. When I go over there, I have people face the north, which is the biggest mountain, because the biggest mountain that we face is our own mental constraints. Um, and I tell them, go before the mountain, let your sound out, let it know that you're standing there, come out of hiding. I want you to yell as loud as you can so that mountain knows that you're standing there. And then I have them say who they are. If you can make, I tell them, if you can make a dent in that mountain, you'll be amazed what you might be able to do otherwise. Um, I tell people, I want that mountain to know that you are standing before it. And your signature is not your name, but your signature is your sound. My name is, and this is my sound. And if you can get the attention of that mountain, you might be surprised what you can do. And once they do that, and it travels to the surrounding mountains, now we have more than one mountain helping us. We have 2 or 3 mountains helping us. And then whatever animals you activate, wherever animals come. There's a lot of sacred beings in that area that I'm hoping to get their attention as well.
Mm.
You would be amazed how many people will stand before that mountain and they'll pace back and forth for 15 minutes before they can even make a sound loud enough. They'll start crying, and because people hear themselves talking, but they've never heard their sound. So a person just hearing their own sound can really put a big dent in the energy body of a person, and then things can start happening. Things can start moving around. Magic happens. I'm one of them folks that believes in magic because I know it exists.
Mm.
I see it all the time.
Yeah.
I can't wait for you to come back because I don't know if you remember, but when we used to work together way back when you still lived here in Tucson, we'd go on the mountains together and you would leave your sound. Uh, and I would watch what would happen when you left your sound. And then I would watch a lot of times after we came back from the mountains, we'd go do some things over there in Tucson with some of your people, and I would watch the impact that it had on them. Uh, I miss that. There's not a lot of people that can do what we do anymore. I'm sure you know that.
Yeah. Um, it's a different mindset, isn't it, than the contemporary.
You could almost say it's a different mindset in the sense that we don't even use our minds. We put our minds away and we let our intuition and our bodies tell us what we need to do.
Yeah.
There's a couple of Naguals that I worked with. They'll tell a person that they want them to be quiet and they don't want them to say anything because whenever they talk, that just gets in the way. They say, today I want to work with just your body. So you won't need to say anything.
Mm.
And they'll work with the body of a person because the body is its own wisdom. The body knows what to do if we can just get out of its way. Right?
Right. Right. Yeah. Yeah. I'm trying to I'm trying to think of another question, but I think we've almost moved into the non-word portion of knowingness.
Isn't it? Isn't that the truth?
Yeah.
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 You know, one of the things, Louis, that I try to get folks to tap into is the necessity of ceremony and ritual, like calling in the energy of the plants and asking for their help. Plants. I always tell people, did you eat this morning? Yeah, who told you to eat? Nobody. Why did you eat? Well, I was hungry. Well, I tell them the same way that your body is hungry is the same way that your energy body gets hungry too for certain things that happen to it, which is why we use ceremony and ritual with certain kinds of plants. Tell them there's plants that feed the body, but there's plants that also feed the energy body. And you need them as bad as you need eggs and bread in the morning. Sage and sweetgrass and Palo Santo and all of those kinds of plants have a place too. And if we can understand that by setting up a ceremony or ritual where I kind of start my day off with these things, kind of supports and puts in motion me feeding that part of my body that I may not understand on a cognitive intellectual level, but that needs feeding just as much. It will open me up in ways I don't even understand until I start doing it. It's kind of like going to the gym and working out every day and eating every day. And so if I can feed my energy body by during certain movements or certain ceremonies and rituals, that kind of all comes together and starts to create a healthier premise for things that happen that wouldn't ordinarily happen.
Yeah, yeah.
Um,
And I think that concrete makes it harder.
no, it does, no doubt, of course.
And that's why people in the cities need green space. You
And
know,
that's why they come to the desert.
yeah, yeah.
I have an area out here, but the desert.
Mhm.
The old ones here have a saying: the light of the desert will heat you up to your own brilliance, and no shadow can hide there. Well, I tell people when they come here, the first thing you need to know is there's nowhere for you to hide out here, so you're going to be revealed
Mhm.
yourself, and that makes them very nervous sometimes. Um,
Although I noticed it was sometimes, even though it seemed incredibly flat, it was really hard to find your truck until we got almost upon it. That it that it was well hidden in the place where there was nowhere to hide.
Nothing is what it seems out here.
Yeah, yeah.
The first abilities that you'll learn to develop out here is what we call um, shape shifting, the art of invisibility, how to become invisible in plain sight. Of
Mm.
course, people in the city do that too.
I was thinking that.
They become invisible real easy, and there's when there's a bunch of them around.
Disappear.
You know, I used to do an exercise with people where we would go to a crowded place like Chinatown or somewhere like that, and I would ask them to pull in their energy, to just suck it in and get you make themselves really small and see what happened. And it was almost dangerous, the number of people that bumped into them.
Really?
Yeah, yeah.
I like that.
Yeah. And then I would say, all right, now expand, make yourself really big and walk down the street. And people would get out of their way. And
Nice. I like that.
yeah, it was a great exercise. And it was perfect. Chinatown was perfect because it's so crowded and busy and people are used to knocking each other over.
Well, that's perfect. I
Yeah.
like that. Have you been practicing your blindfold exercises?
Yeah, yeah. I walk upstairs in the complete darkness now.
Hmm.
Yeah.
And now the next step is take it outside.
Yeah. Yeah. It's been too cold.
All right. I forget it's cold out there where you're at. Is it cold over there in New York, Sheldon?
Um, it's a little warmer than it was, but it's still a little cold. I actually like the cold. So, you know,
Yeah.
um,
I
I
remember
get-
years, many years ago, I used to like the cold, but I have a different relationship with it now.
well, I grew up in Michigan where, it was very cold and very snowy, and there's something bracing to me about that, that it,
Yeah.
it kind of enlivens me. I was also thinking, Louis, when you were talking about taking people to Chinatown, that one of the things that I've said to people sometimes in my work with them is if people are bumping into you a lot, then you got to connect with the earth.
Mm.
You got to like place your feet intentionally down on, even if it's concrete or in the park or wherever it is, and connect because there's something off about, I feel there's something off if people are bumping into me. There's something off with me.
Where'd it go? Sheldon, look at you. You know what? When I was there for 9/11, one of the exercises that I did for the folks I was working with, I took them to Central Park, I blindfolded all of them, and I told them to take off their shoes. And you would not believe almost instant centering and they forgot about everything else and they were just right there. And some of them have never even experienced anything like that. And it was just amazing to me. I
Mm.
told them, I want you to walk around until you find a tree and hold on to it and connect to that tree, introduce yourself and talk to it for a little bit. Strangers, of course, that were all around were wondering what the hell. But you could tell they were intrigued, almost wanting, wishing they could be doing that. So do you walk around in Central Park with your shoes off?
Sometimes. Not so much, but sometimes. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
No,
Yeah.
so now it's a little bit cold for sure.
My wife's been taking people on these, they call them forest bathing. Take
Uh-huh.
people into the park to really do the kinds of thing you're talking about, really, you know, commune with the trees and get in touch with,
Beautiful.
yeah,
Wow, she sounds very connected. Sounds great. Beautiful.
yeah.
Yeah. Well, what do you think, Lois? I don't know what happened, but it felt good. It's a
Yeah.
great beginning.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm gonna stop the recording. Um, but it was, yeah, it was really fun.